So Nathan Lane, a two-time Tony winner. We're talking to you a couple of days after the Tonys, but we're going to talk about Emmys. And you've got two shots at Emmys this year. One for your returning guest role on Modern Family, but then also in the TV movie mini actor category for a really interesting film called The Nance, which is a film version of what you did on stage and were nominated for a Tony a couple of years ago. When they came to you with that idea of filming The Nance, what was your first reaction?
I thought it would be a great thing to do. It was all a little bit last minute. I think PBS usually has just been doing concerts and musical things, and they haven't done a play. At least this series, Live from Lincoln Center, hadn't done a play before, or not in a long time. There was at first we were told they might do it, and then finally some people came and saw the play and were very, very moved by it. And Andrew Wilk and his team felt it was important that the play be shown across the country, and because it's an interesting story about that time period, 1937, and New York life, political life, gay life, at that period. And so it was at the sort of the last 2 weeks of the run. They said to us they're going to film this. So it's not a movie in that sense. It's a film of a live stage performance, but we did it. We did 3 extra performances, and they invited people to come see it, and with a lot of cameras. And so I was very happy that they wanted to preserve it that way, and because I loved the play, and so I'm thrilled that PBS felt strongly about doing it.
Yeah, well, I'd been lucky enough to see it earlier in the run, and what I was struck by was that even though you were performing it in front of a live audience, it worked so well as a television film. Did you have to restage it? Was there changes in blocking because of the cameras? Were there rehearsals prior to the filming?
There was nothing. They just came, they put a lot of cameras in, and then they filmed the play. There was one hilarious moment when Jack O'Brien, our director, brilliant director, I think he sort of said it half jokingly, but half not. It was like half hour before we were going to do the play in front of the cameras. This was the first time, and that was just sort of really for a rehearsal for the camera crew. But we were doing the play in front of the audience, and maybe they would capture some things might come through. But they just wanted for the camera moves to rehearse, obviously. And Jack said, so just internalize everything and cut all the bad language. Which we did have to. There were some things that were said in the play that had to be changed for the PBS broadcast. Certain amount of profanity, but you can't really. It's a movie is one thing. That's when the writer has taken, if Doug had taken this and turned it into a screenplay, and we, spent months, filming it. That's one animal, and this is, it's the difference between a live, if you were watching a music video and then a live rock concert performance. You're seeing the sweat, you're seeing a live stage show. So it's but I think you were right, as you were saying. It for me, in some ways, it actually is more intimate than the play. The camera gives you focus and a kind of intimacy that you might have missed certain things if you're just sitting in an audience watching the play. And I was very surprised by that, at how intimate it became, and how certain things that you might not have noticed became very, very strong and prevalent.
This play, just as a performer, you get to do all the burlesque stuff. You have just comedic moments as an actor, dramatic moments as an actor. How did you approach it, just getting ready to do it originally?
Oh, well, that's a long story. It was this was a process of over a few years. When Doug first sent me the play and said, I think this is interesting. And after I finished writing it, I thought of you, and so I read it, and then I called them the next day and said, yes, I very much would like to do this. I think it's very ambitious and theatrical, and it's a time period I wasn't that familiar with. He sort of got the idea because he was writing. He was part of a theater group called the Drama Department, and they were putting on a benefit, and they were going to do old burlesque sketches. So he was looking through them, and he kept seeing in all this old material, occasionally there would be a reference to a Nance. And he sort of knew the British term, Nancy boy, but he had never seen a Nance enters. So he was looking that up and seeing how the character figured in these burlesque sketches. And then at the same time, he had been reading a book called Gay New York by a professor, George Chauncey, which is a really terrific book, fascinating history of gay life from the late 19th century up until 1940. And this sort of was rolling around in his head, and when he went off to some retreat, a writer's retreat, where they were working on projects, and he started to write the first scene between Chauncey and the younger man, played by Johnny Orsini, Ned, in an automat in 1937. And so I was very excited by the notion of developing the play, and eventually, I had said to him, I think this is more of a Lincoln Center type project than a commercial Broadway run. And he approached Andre Bishop, and they were big fans of his there, and that's how that started. We had readings and a couple of workshops, and then finally went into production.
And what's interesting about it is, this is in the New York theater scene, and burlesque, as you said, which is dying. And there had been also that archetype of the sissy in films, and then the production code in the early 30s drives that out of films. And then in your play, the mayor at the time, LaGuardia, who Chauncey's a fan of, is sort of doing the same with the burlesque houses, but particularly targeting the gay audience and the gay actors.
Well, yes, LaGuardia was trying to clean up New York because the World's Fair was coming to New York, and a lot of tourists were coming, and he wanted to get rid of burlesque. And in this case, in this particular burlesque house, the Astor Place Theater, the balcony, I guess, became a popular meeting place for gay men, and so that was sort of notorious, and so because of that, he particularly wanted to close that down. But the character of the Nance was never, they never became a big star. I mean, there were people who played it, and it was not like a lead comic role, but in Doug's story, which is a fictional story of this man, Chauncey Miles, he kind of becomes the star of the show, and the lead comic played by the wonderful Louis Stadlin, who also runs the theater, allows him really to be the star comic because he's so popular with the audiences, which I don't think that would have happened. It certainly worked for our story, and because he becomes so popular, and that becomes a problem because it's drawing a big gay audience. Yeah, I mean, it was, and he states, I think, very clearly in the first scene that he's a conservative and a Republican, which I think sometimes people watching the play don't realize the difference between a conservative Republican of 1937 and one today. It's a huge difference. But, in sort of preparing, I could understand why he was a conservative Republican, because I think he was someone who really had started out with nothing, had a very hard life. Everything was very hard won, and so he couldn't understand all these what he refers to as handouts by the government, and everything he got on his own, and so you know what was the question?
But I think, well, you've certainly answered it and then some. Chris?
Okay, somewhere in there was an answer. Okay, good.
You know, over your career, obviously you do a lot of films and TV too, but I mean, you are acknowledged as one of the stars of Broadway, so I'm sure you get a lot of scripts, you get a lot of plays, you get a lot of musicals, probably some from friends, some from people you don't know at all. How do you know, it's going to be a chunk of your life if you do decide to do something, how do you know when you read something or you're talking to somebody that it's going to be the right thing for you?
Well, first, I think you want to keep reading. You want to see what happens. And I mean, sometimes it's certain people that you want to work with, but it really is about what is the character and the story that they're telling, and yes, whether you want to spend that amount of time working on something, and something that will be hopefully challenging to you. I mean, in this case, I thought this would be a real challenge because of the way it goes back and forth in terms of seeing the on-stage life and the off-stage life, and the sometimes extremely silly burlesque sketches going right into a rather serious scene. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's always about the story that they're telling and how compelling that is, and you know, it's just an instinct. Hopefully you have good instincts that makes you want to do something.
Well, we had mentioned before about you won 2 Tonys, and now we fear that you're sort of turning into the Kelly O'Hara of the Emmys, you know, with 6 nominations behind you and no Emmy yet. So the other role that you'll be submitting to the Emmys this year is from Modern Family. I mean, that's just when you first got approached to do a guest part on that, what was your reaction?
Oh, well, I was a big fan of the show, and I knew Chris Lloyd, Steve Levitan, and Jeff Richman, who was also a very good friend. And I knew that the writing would be terrific, and I had followed the show, but I didn't realize how much they had discussed this character, Pepper.
That's right.
I think in the first season they mentioned him from time to time, and so I knew they would come up with something really funny and special, and so yes, I immediately said I wanted to hop on board. Yeah, it's amazing to me how they have maintained the quality of the writing over 5 years. I mean, when you're writing, what is it 22 episodes a season? That's a lot of work, and and like the cast, they make it look effortless. You know, it's just consistently funny and moving, and the actors all of them are at the top of their game. So it's been just a real pleasure to join them every once in a while.
And your episode this year, and by the way, I always love saying the name Pepper Saltzman. I don't know why, it just makes me laugh.
Yes. Yes.
Your episode this year,
as Eric Stonestreet said at one point, I think the first time I did the show, I said I'm a joke, and he said, "You're not a joke, you're Pepper Saltzman."
Your episode this year is Fight or Flight, and you, for circumstances that could only be on a sitcom, you've got baby fever.
Oh, well, you know, they think that the wonderful Elizabeth Banks has abandoned her child, which, you know, with that character did not seem so surprising. And then suddenly they start, Mitch and Cam have been thinking about maybe having another baby, and Ronaldo and I have obviously thought about it and think, well, here's an opportunity. just going to take this one. And it gets a little heated about who should take the baby and who would be the more appropriate parents.
Yeah, well, it's Pepper. I think you're the first Pepper on TV since Angie Dickinson is Policewoman, Pepper
Is that
Anderson.
right? Oh yeah, she was.
And the similarities are striking.
Long history of Peppers.
What's great with Modern Family is that every time you go back, there's more for you to do. You got the partner this time round. So if they came to you with the idea for a spin-off, a little Salt and Pepper or something, what would you say to that? Would you be
yeah, I mean, we've joked about this over the years. A dash of pepper. We've talked about it, but they have given the character enough. They've given him an occupation. He's a wedding planner. They've given him a partner, Ronaldo, and you know that he's very wealthy. And there's, you could build something on all of that. I think there's, obviously it's all about maintaining the mothership. I don't think the writers who could develop it are going to leave Modern Family to start a new show. I think it's been bandied about, but not in a serious way. I mean, the two people who like Abraham Higginbotham wrote this episode. He and Jeff Richmond. We've talked about it a little bit, but it's fun. It's fun to talk about. Think where you could take that story, but at least at this point, it doesn't seem feasible until Modern Family.
And so I just wanted to jump in and ask. So you filmed this. I mean, you've been so busy lately. I mean, you started the Broadway season with one play. It's only a play, that smash hit by Terrence McNally. Then you must have filmed Modern Family in there. Then you took a break and you went over and did Eugene O'Neill's Iceman Cometh over in Brooklyn for a few months. Now you're back and it's
Brooklyn Academy. Yes.
Now you're back and it's only a play. I mean, it's
we just finished on Sunday. Yeah.
It's as Kristen Chenoweth would say, it's nice to be popular.
Yeah. Look, it's yes, an embarrassment of riches. It was a great to go back and forth between those two plays. It couldn't be. It's one end of the spectrum to the other. And yes, on Modern Family is on a Sunday night I would fly out and film on my day off, Monday, and then fly back, on a red eye and in order to do the show Tuesday night. But it's tiring, but it's a great deal of fun. It's just fun to be with those actors. Eric and Jesse are so terrific, and so it doesn't seem like work. It's always, you might be tired at the end of it, but it's all been worth it because it's been so much fun.
I wanted to also ask you, last time you were on with me, we talked about the Birdcage and the fact that your ensemble won at SAG that year and so forth. And since our conversation, on a sad note, Robin Williams has passed and Mike Nichols has passed. I just wonder if you had a comment about each of those two men.
Well, these are huge losses. These are two geniuses. Mike, who first changed the face of comedy with Elaine May, and then became this brilliant director, and he was incredibly kind and generous to me, and gave me that huge opportunity with the Birdcage, and I'll always be grateful to him for that, and just to have played a small part in his career and legacy. And Robin, again, another benevolent genius who was so generous to me, and it was so much fun to work with, and so many laughs, and just obviously a very complicated soul, but incredibly sensitive, and and beautiful person. Look, the reaction was extraordinary. The outpouring of love for him and what he had meant to people. It says a lot. And obviously they will both be greatly missed.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time in your really hectic schedule to talk to us today, and really just best of luck at the Emmys. As I said, it took Kelly O'Hara till her 6th nomination to win a Tony, so maybe it'll be lucky 7 or 8.
Number 7? Okay.
Or 8.
Bob Murray won on his 7th, so maybe this is my chance.
You know your Emmy history. Well, that's impressive. You're absolutely right. So, and he won after talking to Gold Derby. So,
is that right?
Right.
And I'm sure you're the good luck charm. All right. Well, let's hope so.
Okay. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.